G'day everyone, welcome to another Azure Roundup session. I know it's been a while, but today we've got our original and our best, arguably, well, I'll call her our best because she's one of my best mates, Janhavi Anturkar, who is now a ace Azure customer engineer, and she's going to be covering off tips and tricks to keep your app service apps healthy. So Janhavi, welcome back to Azure Roundup.
Thank you, George, and it's good to be here. And I think this is my third or fourth
I think
video.
it's your fourth.
Yeah.
It's your fourth, yeah.
Oh, it's my fourth. Yay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to give you some good tips today. This is going to be a really interesting session, especially when you have got your applications which are deployed in Azure App Services. So in your modern day data centers, you have got all these different complex and parts and infrastructure, and there are a lot of parts which are moving parts as well. And you have got your virtual machines, and then on that virtual machines you're deploying your application. So app service basically is platform as a service, but then behind the scene what you have is your virtual machines, and these VMs, they can restart, they can move, or systems are upgraded, and file servers, they are scaled up, scaled down, and all these events are to be expected in the cloud environment. So you can make your cloud apps resilient even if all these things are happening. Okay, there are all these different upgrades happening, updates happening, and lots of things going behind the scene, but you want to make sure that your app is still working, it's still resilient. So you can follow certain best practices, and those are the things that we are going to talk about in this session today. So before we actually start talking about those things, I just want to talk about the app service. So in the app service, which is platform as a service, you're going to deploy your code and the infrastructure that is there. So the virtual machine, the runtime that is used for your application, all of that, the operating system, everything is managed by Azure for you. Okay, so what you are doing is you are just deploying your application and whatever your data is that you are managing. So when we say Azure is managing things, what does it really mean? Azure manages your operating system patching. So you have got patching happening at the physical server layers, and then also on the guest virtual machines which run their app service resources. Now both of these, they are updated monthly, and that kind of aligns with the Patch Tuesday schedule. And these updates, they are applied automatically in such a way that it's going to guarantee the high availability SLA that Azure service provides you. Okay. Now you also get then language runtime versions because they need updating as well. So you get the new and stable versions of the supported language runtime. So these could be your major versions or minor versions or even patch for the runtime. These are also periodically added to your app service instance. Now, some updates that you get, they will be overwriting an existing installation, while others, they are installed side by side with existing versions. Now, when there is an overwrite installation happening, that means your app is going to then automatically run on that updated runtime. When it's a side by side installation, then that means you need to manually migrate your app to take advantage of that new runtime version here. So there are all these different things happening behind the scene. Then you need to make sure that whatever is happening, your application is not really impacted. So Microsoft or Azure is doing things to make sure that your app doesn't get impacted. But this is finally infrastructure, right? Physical infrastructure at the end. So there is a possibility that there is a problem in the infrastructure and then your app needs to be moved somewhere. Now, when that is happening, the healing is going on, it could be, it could happen that maybe your app is not available for a few seconds or something. So if you want to avoid those kind of situations, then you can do a lot of things in there. Okay. So let's start with the basics of what you can do. So first thing, always recommended is you use multiple instances. So when you first time create your app service, you are creating your app service in one virtual machine instance. So there's only one virtual machine instance that is created. But running your app on only one VM instance, it's kind of an immediate single point of failure because it's one VM. So if something goes wrong, then you don't really have any other option, right? So ensuring that you have got multiple instances allocated to your app is important. So if something goes wrong with any particular instance, your app will still be able to respond to the requests which are going to other instances. Okay. So when you're doing this, you need to keep in mind that your application code, it should be able to handle these multiple instances without any kind of synchronization issues when you are reading from or writing to your data sources. And you can allocate multiple instances to your app by going to the scale out option. So when we say we are doing multiple instances, what does it really mean? So default, you have got this one instance of VM. Here my application is running. We want to add multiple instances. So we are basically doing horizontal scaling here. So you could add multiple instances like that. So we have got that option here in Azure, and we'll go to the Azure portal and see that as well. So here you can do either manual scale or you can do custom scaling. So you would scale your application based on either number of instances. So you say, okay, I want 3 instances, 5 instances, or whatever. And you can also do it based on some kind of a metric, like maybe you want to look for higher CPU percentage, or maybe you want to do it on specific days. Like, for example, Christmas is coming, I have got shopping site, and I know people are going to come and buy gifts. So it's going to be very busy. After Christmas, probably not so much. So maybe I want to reduce. So I could do that with this. So you want to have these multiple instances, and that is also going to help you then to avoid that single point of failure. So you are running your app with those 2 or 3 instances. And this is especially important if your app takes considerable time to start, which is known as the cold start. So keeping more than one instance ensure that your application is available when your app service moves or upgrades the underlying virtual machine instances. You can also configure different rules to automatically scale out, which we talked about. So custom auto scaling and so on. So let's actually go to the portal and see how we can do it. So I'm going to go to my Azure portal, and to save on time, I have actually already created an app service. So I'm not going to create a new one. I'll just directly go to my app service here, and we can see in the app service, if I scroll down here, I have got this option, scale out app service plan. So here I can go and I can say currently I have got this one, and I could change it manually to whatever number and I can save. So that means there will be 3 virtual machines on which my app is running. Or I can go here and I can say custom auto scaling. And then here I can decide, okay, how do I want to scale? So I can add a rule here and I can say, okay, my app is built such that it is very CPU bound. So I want to look for CPU percentage, or I can look for all these other different metrics as well. So we have got a choice here. So depending on how your app was developed, you want to pick up the matrix. You could add multiple rules as well. Like if you want to consider different options in here, so you can add multiple rules. And then in the instance limit, you want to make sure that you minimum have got 2 instances to start with, 2 or 3, so that you, when you scale down, you at least have that minimum instances to make your app resilient. Okay. You could also do the scaling based on the days. So you can say here specific count, and then you could add specific dates or days. So you can say, okay, on weekdays I've got a lot of traffic, weekends I don't, so I want to change. So you can scale. So that's one thing that you can do. You can use multiple instances.
Nice.
Second option we have is we can update default settings. So when you deploy your application, right, as a developer, you have got these options. So now there are lots of different settings that we can set for our app services. Now, 2 important settings that I'm going to talk about is we have got here always on, and then we have got the AR. So these 2 options we are going to talk about here. So always on, as the name says, it keeps your virtual machine instances alive when no requests have been received in last 20 minutes. So by default, this always on, this is disabled, okay? But we need to make sure that we turn it on. So enabling always on will limit the application cold starts, Okay. The second setting that we have is this ARR affinity. So this creates sticky sessions so that the client will connect to the same app instance on subsequent requests. Okay. But there's a catch here. So ARR affinity, it can cause unequal distribution of your requests between your instances and possibly overload an instance. So for your production apps that are aiming to be robust, it is recommended to set the always on to on and ARR affinity to off. Disabling ARR affinity will assume that your application is either stateless or the session state is stored on some remote service, like maybe a database or a caching service or something like that. Okay, so that's these are the two settings which can help. Now, where are these settings? We can again go to our Azure portal and we go into configuration. So configuration is the place where you will see a lot of settings here. So we have got our application settings and things, but we want to go to general settings. And in the general settings, if you scroll down, you can see here always on. So it says here as well, prevents your app from being idle out due to inactivity. Okay. And the second option you have is the ARR affinity. So here again, it gives you a message here, improve the performance of your stateless app by turning the cookies off. But if you want to have that affinity, like you want to have sticky sessions, then you want to keep it on. Okay. So those are the two settings. Next, what you can do is you can leverage deployment slots. Now, before deploying your new code to production, you can make use of this deployment slots feature in app service. So what are these deployment slots? So these are live applications which have got their own host names. The app content and the configuration elements, they can be swapped between the two deployment slots here, including the production slot. So deploying an app to a slot first and then swapping it into production, make sure that all the instances of the staging slot, they are warmed up before swapping into production. So what this does, it eliminates your downtime when you deploy your app, and the traffic redirection is also seamless and no request will be dropped because of the swap operations. You can automate this entire workflow by configuring auto swap, and you can also validate your app changes in the staging environment before swapping it into the production slot here. So after a swap, the slot with that previously staged app now has got your previous production app. Okay. So in case if you want to go back to your last known good site because you found some issue and you think that, okay, no, this is not right, I want to go back to my old site, then you do have that option. So you could always go back to that old site that you have got. And then you can also do swap with preview, which allows you to test your app in your staging slot against your production settings and also warm up the app. So after doing your tests and then warming up all necessary parts, you can then complete the swap. And then the app will start receiving the production traffic without restarting. So this has then got a high impact on your app's availability and also your performance.
Sounds good, and I know that that's always good for change management, so you can state what your failback is if need be.
Yeah. So another thing that we can do is we can make use of application initialization. So we talked about the deployment slots, right? Now during that swap operation, the web apps worker process, it may be get restarted. Okay. In the reason it gets restarted is because there are some settings which need to take effect. So for that, the worker process will get restarted. Now, even though the swap does not proceed until the restarted worker process comes back online on every virtual machine instance, it may still not be enough for the application to be completely ready to take the production traffic. So in that case, you can use application initialization module to completely warm up your application prior to swapping it into production. So application initialization module is basically a feature of iOS on Windows. So this is applicable for apps which are deployed in Windows, and you can have a setting like this in your config file. Okay, so to use this module, you can specify one or more URL paths that need to be requested in order to warm up your application. So you'll have some code that's running, which is going to warm up your application. So you run that, which initializes your application, and then that also makes sure that when your app deployment is done, you have done the swapping and everything, your app is up and running completely so that it starts taking requests. The instance is completely warmed up in that scenario. So let's look at our deployment slots in the portal. So here I can go to the Azure portal and I have got my deployment slots. And you can see here that I already have 2 deployment slots and I could create more. Now, depending on the plan you have chosen, you could create 5 or 10. So it depends on the plan. So here I have got 2, and to swap, all I can do is I have to go swap and I can decide, okay, I want to I have deployed my application to my dev, everything is good, and now I want to deploy it to production. So I do that and I click swap. So after doing that, my application will be all warmed up and then I'll be able to see the request going directly to that. So the swapping does not drop any kind of requests or anything in there. And if you have got that initialization module, then it's going to make sure that if your application needs some extra things to be done, then that will happen through that initialization module there.
That basically means I can just balance the traffic between the two of them, right?
You do have an option to balance the traffic between these slots if you want. Now that is the feature that you are going to use when you want to make sure that, okay, before going to production, I just want to make sure that everything's working fine, and I have got this set of users whom I want to ask to test this feature. So what you can do, certain people can go to this. So you can say, okay, I want to go 10% people to my this dev slot so that they'll test it. They'll let me know the feedback. And if everything's fine, then I do the swap and change the traffic back to 100%. So
Okay.
then everybody's going there. Okay.
It's like doing a canary release, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Cool.
Okay, so we talked about deployment slots. Now our application is there in production. So what all things we can do there? So there's something called as health check path. So your app service, it allows you to specify a health check path to your apps. The platform will ping the path to determine if your application is healthy and responding to requests. Okay, so when your site is scaled out to multiple instances, app service will exclude then any unhealthy instances from the serving requests. Okay, so improving your overall, that is going to improve your overall ability. Okay, now your app's health check path, it should pull the critical components of your application, like your database, or it could be your caching service, or maybe messaging service. So this path that you are going to specify should pull these different services and then ensure that the status returned by the health check path is an accurate picture of the overall health of your application. One important thing to note here is that the health check feature works only when you have 2 or more instances. So it doesn't work for one instance, you have to have 2 or more instances. And then here you can see, for example, we have got, it's checking these different connections in this image. So database and the service, caching service and messaging service. And if everything's good, then it will say HTTP 200 okay, and then you will be able to send your request there. If there is some problem, then that instance will be removed in that situation. Okay. So the what does the app service do in with these health checks? So when given a path on your app, health check pings that path on all the instances of your app service plan at 1 minute intervals. If an instance doesn't respond with the 200 to 299 status code, so which are all the HTTP successful type of status code, if it doesn't respond with that after two or more requests or fails to respond to the ping, the system determines that it's unhealthy and then it removes it. After removal, health check continues to ping the unhealthy instance. If it continues to respond unsuccessfully, the app service restarts that virtual machine in an effort to return the instance to healthy state. Okay. Now, if an instance it remains unhealthy for 1 hour, then it will be replaced with the new instance. Okay. Furthermore, when you are scaling up or out, app service pings the health check path to ensure new instances are ready. Okay, so this gives you that ability to make sure that all the instances that you're running, they are healthy. And to set this up, we can again go to our Azure portal, and in our app service, if we scroll down, we have got here health check. So this is where you can then enable, and then you can specify a path. So something like maybe API, health check, or something like that. So give your path here where you have got that health check happening, and then it will and save this. So that will then implement that health check for your applications.
So similar to a health probe on a load balancer, right?
Yeah, yeah. Then you could also enable local cache. So your Azure App Service local cache feature, it gives your a web role view of your content. So this content, it's a write but discard type of cache of your storage content, which is created asynchronously on your site startup. So when this cache is ready, the site is switched to run against the cache content. And apps that run on local cache, they are immune to latencies that occur when they access content on Azure storage. They are immune to the planned upgrades or unplanned downtimes and any other disruptions in Azure storage that occur on your servers that serve the content share. And they have got fewer app restarts due to the storage share changes. And to do this, what you have to do is you need to make use of this particular setting. So web app, website local cache option equal to always. So that's going to create that cache. Now by default, the local cache size that you have got, it is 1 GB. This includes your slash site content and also slash site extensions. Folders which are copied from the content store as well as any locally created logs and the data folders. Now to increase this limit, you can use a setting which is website local cache size in MB, and you can change to up to 2 gigs. Okay. However, you need to remember that it will take longer to load the local cache as the size increases. So you need to increase the amount carefully. Like you just be cautious of that. It might take longer if you keep on increasing your cache. The next option we have is auto healing. So sometimes your application, it might experience some kind of unexpected behavior that could be resolved by maybe a simple restart. And it happens a lot of times. We see that you just restart and things get solved. So the auto heal feature, it allows you to do exactly that. Okay, so it allows you to define a condition that would trigger auto heal and an action that auto heal will initiate when the condition is met. So you can create an auto heal mitigation rule by going to the diagnostic tools. There is an option which I'll show you on the portal, and then there you have to select that you want auto heal, and then there are different options here. So let's have a look at those. So I'm gonna go to again Azure portal. Let's scroll up, and here we have got diagnose, and solve problems. And then in that, we have got these diagnostic tools. So we can go to these tools, and there's whole heap of tools here. Okay, so we have got lots of tools available. So the one we are interested in, this one, which is Autoheal. Now there are different scenarios you can make use of here. So first is recycling based on the request count. Okay, so first thing we have to do is on. Now here you can see you can define condition, then you can configure the actions, and then you can override when the action executes. Okay, so here you have got the option to say, let's say, request duration. So add slow request rule, and then you can add here the rule. What should be your minimum duration, what is the time interval, and what is the request path. And then you can see here whether you want to recycle the process. Okay, so you can choose that, or you have got the other option of you could log to an event log if you want. So if you want to do that analysis later, you can log into event log. So let's say you want to get a notification of that situation when your website starts throwing specific status codes or something. So you could pick the status codes and then you can log it to event. You can also look for the set up the memory limit option here. So you can maybe take custom actions based on your memory limit. So if I select here, and then I want to take some custom action, like maybe I want to dump that, do the memory dump here, or I want to uh, make use of this CLR profiler, or maybe Java memory dump. So I can use either of these different diagnostic tools, or I can run a specific executable here. Okay, I can also look for the request counts here, and then I can configure. Um, and when you want to trigger this. So after these many requests, maybe I want to recycle the process or something like that. So these kind of things you can implement with this auto healing, which will help you to perform certain actions when a specific condition is met, so that that unexpected behavior that you were saying, you can mitigate that. You can take action on that unexpected behavior. Okay. So the next one that you have is you can minimize the app service plan density. Okay. Now with the app service plan, you can have multiple applications running in same application service plan. Okay, that helps you to save costs. But running too many apps in the app service plan can have negative impact on your performance, because all the apps running on the app service plan, they can be seen, they'll be using the same resources that you have got. So you have got two virtual machines and your apps are running on both those virtual machines. So they are making use of those resources. Now if one of the application is then becomes heavy, then the other might get impacted. Okay, so you have to just consider how many apps do you have, and is it okay to have those many um, apps that you have got registered there. And the pricing tier of your app service plan will actually decide the compute power and the features that you are going to get. The higher the tier, the more features and more compute power. So you could do multiple applications, like even increase more applications there. So there is an option in the app service where you can go and actually see how many app service apps you have got, and is it good to have those many apps. Okay, so let's actually go back to our web app.
So this would be good. This is always an interesting one of where do you find the balance of how many applications you actually have on that single instance.
Yeah, so here actually it will show you a report, and we can see how many apps are there. And it's like this. So it shows you how many apps you have got, and depending on the size of your workers, it'll actually give you, like if it's a small, then you can have these many, medium, these many, large, these many. So it tells you. And if it's not good situation, then this green becomes yellow.
Okay.
Change. Yeah. So it gives you a warning there.
Yeah.
So here, distributing your app across multiple instances. Hang on, that one. Total active sites. So this is the one we want to see. So total active sites on the app service plan within the recommended value. Okay. So we have got two active apps at the moment. Now I actually have got, if you think from app perspective, it's only one app, but I've got two slots. So you have to remember that the slots that you create, they are also like an app. So if you have got one app which has got 5 slots and the other app which has got 10 slots, and then you are technically running 15 apps there, right? So currently it says I
Yep.
have got two apps. So it is okay at the moment, but if it goes beyond that, then it's going to have problem. Okay. So
Yep.
this is where you come and you see how many apps you have got. So, and it's always a good idea to minimize that app service plan density there.
Okay. No worries.
And it's always good idea to monitor the disk space usage that we have got. So you ensure that the disk space used by your www folder, it should be less than 1 gig. Now, it's a very healthy practice in reducing the downtime during the app restarts and then improve the application performance there. And you can look for this quota. So if you go back to your Azure portal, and let me come back to the main web app menu. And if I scroll down here, so here we can see we have got the quotas here. So I can go in here and I can see the thresholds and the details about how much I am using. So this particular app is using this much, my slot is using this much. Okay. So that's the difference between my production and the dev slot. But if I had multiple apps again, then they'll also come up in here and it'll tell you what is your situation in terms of disk space usage. As long So the reason why you want to keep it low is because you want to minimize that downtime during that app restarts and you want to improve that application performance there. Okay, so next one we have is you enable application insights. So application insights, it's a suite of features which will empower you to troubleshoot the incidents that happen on your app. So you can use it to debug errors or diagnose performance or any degradations which are caused by dependencies and more. So you can use that. Now, one of the powerful features of application insights is the app insights profiler. So enabling application insights profiler, it provides you with performance traces for your applications that are running in production in Azure. So profiler, it captures the traces. Okay.
Okay.
The data, so profiler captures the data automatically at scale without negatively impacting your users or your application, and it will help you to identify the hot code paths that take the longest when handling a web request.
Oh, okay.
So, and this works with your .NET application. So when profiler is running, it profiles randomly about once per hour and for a duration of 2 minutes. And if your application is handling a steady stream of requests, the profiler, it will upload the traces every hour. Okay? So then the app insights, it allows you to track your dependencies in your application and you can then leverage this feature to troubleshoot your slow requests and things. So
Okay.
for example, if I go back to my Azure portal and I go here in my application insights, so I'm going to go to my actual application insights resource. And if I go to performance, there is the profiler. Okay. So we want to go to the profiler here. And you can see that there have been all these different profiling sessions that have happened. Oops, go here. So these are different profiling sessions that have happened. Now I can go to this and I can look for the details. So here it's going to show me. So here you can see we have got the different hotpaths here for my web requests. Okay, so for each of the web requests, it is showing all these parts. Right. So I can then go and look for the details of each of these, what's happening here. I can also look for the flame graph in here if I want. And I can also download this to analyze it further. So there is a download trace. You can download that and you can analyze it. And here you can see all the details of my request, and I can see depending on what I'm looking for, I can go in and have a look at these detailed requests in here. Okay, so that's the profiling, and you could download as well for your further analysis. So you can make use of these application insights. And then next option you have is deploy in multiple regions, which we always talk about. So deploying your service across multiple regions can then help you to save from any disastrous situation. So if the region goes down, and we talk about that when we are talking about the disaster recovery and those kind of scenarios. But in general, like from your users accessibility perspective also, like you can deploy your services in multiple regions and divert specific users to specific regions so that they are near to that region. You can do that. So you can make use of like Azure Front Door or Traffic Manager and those kind of things. And this is going to then give you protection against the data center level failure as well. So if something goes down, let's say there's floods or maybe some civil unrest or something, and some issue has happened, then you're still protected in that situation. Next, you can make use of this risk assessment. Okay, so this is the last option that we are going to look for, which is looking at different options under that risk assessment. So there are two options. First is best practices, which are for availability and performance, and best practices for optimal configuration. So let's go and have a look at that. So let me close this, close that. I'm going to go back to my application actually. So let's go to the web app and we go to diagnose and solve problems. And in there, we have got here risk assessments. So here we have got best practices for availability. And you can come here and you can look for different options. So Autoheal check I haven't set up, so it's recommending that, or distributing the web app. So it's recommending that you distribute your web app across multiple instances, because I haven't done that. And then local cache utilization, health check feature. So it gives you this information about what you can do from best practice perspective. And then here we have got the optimal configuration. So have you done the optimal configuration for this? Like it's always a good idea to enable backup for the config, and then bind SSL you want to set up, and scale the capacity check. So you can auto scale. We haven't configured that, so it will tell you. And scale out to additional 20%. So it's giving you all this information here, which is again a very useful tool to have, so that you can make sure that your applications, which are deployed in Azure App Services, are healthy. So those are the different tools or tips and tricks that you can go through to keep your apps healthy. There's a few other things here, like you can look for the availability and performance if you want. And it shows you here, you can do high CPU analysis, for example, or web app down, then you can look for that. Memory analysis. So lots of tools are there. You just need to know where to look, and you will be able to help yourself a lot of times before you want to raise the support ticket or something with Azure. Just make sure that you have done all these things to keep your apps healthy.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool. I don't think I'd ever gone through or looked at the diagnosis and some of the problem-solving options we've got inside there. I think that's some really good tips and really useful for our viewers. So awesome. Thanks very much for bringing that along and coming and sharing yet another piece of amazing information to our audience on the Microsoft Trainer Community channel, Janhavi, and hopefully we'll have you come again in the future. So thanks a lot. And if you liked the session, like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you all again soon. So thanks, Janhavi.
Thank you, George. And thanks, everyone. Please like, share, and subscribe.
Bye.
Bye.